Town of Prescott Valley Work Study Session, April 15th, 2021. Call to order. Welcome, everyone. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Kinsinger?
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Here.
Councilmember Hepperly?
Here.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Present.
Councilmember Packard?
Present.
Vice Mayor Hunt?
Here.
Mayor Palguda?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Item 3A, Friends of the Library eBay Store. Welcome, ladies.
Casey always has a smile.
I know. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I have our amazing volunteer coordinator, Randy Silbaugh. She has done some wonderful things with our volunteers and really amped up our volunteer program, so she's going to be talking about that tonight.
Good evening. Okay, as Casey said, I'm Brandy Silva. I'm the volunteer coordinator for community services. So I oversee the library, parks and recreation, special events, and arts and culture for that department. We are currently 120 volunteers strong in our department. We lead Prescott Valley and Prescott with the amount of our volunteer force. So we are number one in that. Next week starts our kickoff for a 5-day celebration for National Volunteer Week. So we start that on Monday. It's a 5-day celebration where we recognize all of the great things our volunteers do for us in community services. And to do that, I wanted to put some recognition on our Friends of the Library organization and another new volunteer program, which was created in November. And we branched off a little bit from the FOL and were given permission to start an online presence, and we started an eBay store. I brought on Diane and Emily. They are two volunteers that run the store for us. They oversee all the operations and do all the research, all the pricing. They do all of the things. I will let them introduce themselves. And I have the rest of the FOL members here behind me for support. Our FOL, in case anyone doesn't know, is a nonprofit organization that operates under the umbrella of the library. They completely run the bookstore, and any revenue generated, 99% of the revenue they generate goes right back into the library in our community. So during COVID, when we kind of took a hit in revenue, like everyone did, we started this store to bring in additional revenue for our library and community. We went to Prescott and trained with one of my colleagues down there, and they're Amazon volunteers. And we spent a few days doing that and learned everything we could. We started off with Amazon, which didn't go so well, because they only have robots. They don't have people that talk to us. So we switched over to eBay. We started going through hundreds of donations that we get from around our community and started listing. We have officially sold items, and we have quite an extensive list up there. This is Diane Jordan. She is my lead eBay volunteer, and she oversees all the account maintenance, questions, all the feedback, all of those things. You wanna introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Diane Jordan, native to Arizona. I've been volunteering in libraries for the last 12 years. Just moved to Prescott Valley last August and joined the Friends, and through Brandy started on the eBay. I do the actual listing, taking the pictures and listing, the packaging, the mailing, handling feedback. We're learning on what prices to set items at. We follow it. If it doesn't sell, we adjust the price. And it's a little slow, but it's working well, and the feedback we've gotten has been very positive, so I think it'll be a good thing for the library. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I heavily recruited Diane upon 3 minutes of meeting her. And then Emily, who couldn't be here tonight. This is Emily Hamilton. I brought her on November 4th, 2020. She came on, and she didn't know anything like me about selling books online.
I'm sure she knew something. But
she didn't. She really didn't. Whenever I interview or volunteers, I kind of like to feel out where their skill set is, and she was interested in helping me get started, and now she basically can eye books and let me know how much they're going to be worth and if we should list them or not. That's her up there, and that is a recent donation we got from a member of our community who donated us a very gorgeous 100-book collection. They're from an Easton publishing house. Those are leather-bound collector's editions ones, and the whole 100 set is worth about $7,000. So our part of the process is to get the donations, then Emily researches them, sees what they last sold for and where we can list them. And then she takes care of all of the shipping as well. When we first started, we had hundreds of donations to sort through, and she knocked it all out in a couple months. Emily is also a native Arizonian, and she moved here in 1995, homeschooled all of her children from kindergarten through high school, and she says currently they're on a gap year, and they're all taking a nice little break before college starts. And those are the only 2 volunteers we have to run the entire bookstore. It's been really successful as far as members of the community that aren't comfortable coming in public yet can now go online and still access some of the same materials. A lot of collectors' items, first editions. We have a signed copy of a Richard Nixon book. You'd be amazed.
Wow.
So just a quick shout out to all my volunteers for Volunteer Appreciation Week, especially Friends of the Library, who volunteer all of their time just for the betterment of PVPL. The amount of things they do for us is incredible. Any of our community members that come in and buy from our bookstore, the revenue is brought back to the library. And they also have 2 other ways to donate that I want to make you aware of. One is through Fry's, and it is a community donation program, and you can go onto your Fry's app if you do click list or even in the store, and you can donate a portion of your tax to our Prescott Valley Friends of the Library. We also do the same thing through the Amazon Smile program, so our patrons from around the community and honestly worldwide could go on there and make a donation to us as well, and that all comes right back to us. As far as our other volunteer crew, which some are behind me, through COVID, we allowed our volunteers to come back on June 1st. They were not out that long. We were the only organization in all of Northern Arizona to even have volunteers at the time, and they really stepped up. Those that didn't come back right away made us masks, they made us any PPE we needed, they donated hand sanitizer, they did whatever they could from home, ran our reports, everything like that. In fact, since July 2020 till currently, and that was in the thick of our spikes, we had 7,201 total volunteer hours donated to us. And currently, since July 20, their full-time employee equivalent is 3.39. Wow. So in the last few months, they have done the same amount of work as 3 full-time employees. They are amazing. They come from all over. They have the best stories. And all of them volunteer with us because they are passionate for the betterment of Prescott Valley. So if you see a volunteer next week, give them a shout out. Or you can stop by our celebration and say hi too. And that's all.
Council, do you have any questions? Ma'am, great job. And great job to you folks in the back. We appreciate everything that you do. So.
Good job, Pete. 120 of you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Item 3B, Amendment to the Town Code, Chapter 12, Floodplain Management. Welcome, sir.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, good evening. Somebody told me there'd be popcorn here. I'm not seeing it yet. First and foremost, I want to thank Stephen and Ivan and legal staff for all your efforts and work in writing all of these documents and assisting with writing these council actions, which are actually very good. Ivan's a historian, and he does very well compiling these things and putting them together, so thank you. We haven't discussed, at least in my tenure, 7 years as a floodplain manager, we haven't discussed updating our ordinances, and the council action here does state that the town has effectively managed its floodplains since shortly after incorporation. The first maps were issued in 1982, and about every 10 to 15 years after, they're reissued. We do participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, and that's a federally funded program that allows residents to obtain flood insurance in Prescott Valley. It does involve federal funding, and so ultimate oversight into compliance with the NFIP requirements is overseen by the Arizona Department of Water Resources. And what they essentially do every 3 to 5 years is they do a somewhat informal community assist visit, and it's a somewhat informal audit, and they look at your floodplain management program, and one of the things that they look at is what are your ordinances? Are they up to date? Are they up to the current federal and state models? And so we had our last visit here last September, and we passed with flying colors, as we always do, with the exception of we needed to update our ordinances. And so what you see before you are the efforts between our legal department and the Arizona Department of Water Resources, trying to bring our code up to those current models. And so there's various rewording. There's some rewording it's quite lengthy, and you have it before you. So these are pretty much for the federal and state standards. There is one exception. There is a reference to a 1989 ADWR report, which identified additional areas that they considered flood prone and wanted treated as if it were a floodplain. And those areas have since either been developed or the areas around have been developed. So it's changed the characteristics, and it's pretty much made that report obsolete. So I'm requesting that be removed from the ordinances. But other than that, it's just pretty much standard, trying to bring everything up to speed. Questions?
It's very clear looking at it. It was just a lot of red pen, I'm sure, on your part and Ivan's part and Stephen's part, bringing this together. So definitely needed to happen. No, I agree.
So it's my understanding there'll be 2 readings over the next 2 regular meetings and then adoption at that point. So, okay, great.
All right.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to just take a moment and to borrow words from Ivan. This is kind of Carol and Ivan's baby. So,
gotcha.
You heard them say the library was my baby. So this was there. Obviously, Carol worked hard with Ron to get the right language and get it all cleaned up and then reviewed it. So it's definitely been a concentrated effort by everyone and something that was probably long overdue to be done. So we're glad to have it behind us.
Agreed. Thank you, sir. Moving on, item 3C, floodplain map provision.
Okay, this is another item that we really don't discuss too often. I think last time I was up here was in 2017. And this is a journey that really started back in 2010 when we had our last townwide round of maps issued. As we started to use these maps, we found one deficiency after another. We found areas where structures were in a floodplain where they shouldn't be, and vice versa. We found floodplain shifts that were errant. We found streets that were missing or mislabeled, and so it just went on and on and on and on. And so I was at a floodplain conference, and I happened to mention it to Yavapai County, and they said, hey, we have an opportunity. You can partner with us, and you can use $200,000 in federal FEMA grants to do some remapping efforts. And so we jumped on board with that. They administered the project. They used their staff. They used their professional consultants, engineering and surveying. And this was in 2015. We went forward. We figured this would be a 2-phased approach. The first phase, we wanted to look at the more important, more critical floodplain areas that we felt needed to really be looked at first. And we call these the 4 fingers. There's a 4th finger, which is actually the viewpoint corridor. That was actually being studied at the time as part of all of the viewpoint corridor projects. And so we did not include that in this study. But we did look at the other 3 fingers, and what we did was we asked FEMA because we felt that the floodplains that were being shown were using data that just kept rolling over every year from 1982. And we just felt that the flows weren't right, the limits weren't correct. And so we had a town-wide master drainage study done in 2003. And so we asked FEMA, can we use this data and do some new modeling? Will you accept it? And they said, yes, they would. And so we went and we did that. We entered that data. We remodeled. We saw the limits change. And sure enough, we saw some changes in flows, which we thought. And as an example, if you look at that lakeshore floodplain channel, all the way to the right, that's where it enters the Agua Fria. Okay, under the old data for a 100-year event, that would show 1,068 cubic feet per second for a 100-year event. After our modeling, we have 3,674 cubic feet per second. So it really substantially changed. I mean, it was substantial. It changed the limits substantially. From that study, we had 18 structures that we identified as being in high risk, and we had 24 structures as being not in high risk. So they were, they weren't in the floodplain. And so that's significant to us. And when I refer to risk, what you see in red is the high risk area. Okay, those are the areas that are more prone to loss of life or property from flooding during significant flood events or, rain events. But what you see outside those red areas are also floodplain. Those are considered X. Those are low-risk floodplain areas. So right outside the building, the parking lot, Scoot Boulevard, it's all in Zone X. It's a low-risk floodplain. And so that's really important that anywhere is subject to flooding. So you really have to look at these as risk, not just, this is where water's going to flow or whatever. So that's what you really have to look at. And in Arizona, from the 2011 stats that I have, 25% of all flood damage claims in the state of Arizona occur in the outlying low-risk areas. And only 2%, and this is from the 2011 data, I've heard it's higher now, only 2% of structures in those low-risk areas have flood insurance. So that's significant as well. And that's why you see rates keep increasing, because FEMA's underfunded. And so they have challenges. They have to keep increasing rates. Now they're looking at doing private funding. They're looking at, trying to get away from the federal NFIP funding. So I know that that's still in process. So we were really happy with those results. Those maps, and there's 2 maps right there. There's 16 town-wide, so that's 2 right there that we took care of. Those became effective and official in 2017. Next phase started after that, and we're still in that phase. We thought this would be a 2 or 3 year process. We're in year 6. Okay, so actually it started in 2010 when we started seeing all of this. So phase 2, we're in phase 2 right now. Okay, phase 2 is to correct all the other stuff that we saw, and this is one of the things we saw. These are errant floodplain shifts. Okay, so what you're looking at right here in the pink is where the floodplain should be. This is actually a channel that was constructed. This is Pronghorn. This is way to the north, almost to the county. So the pink is the channel that was actually constructed in the 2000s as part of the Viewpoint and Pronghorn subdivisions. This was part of the drainage infrastructure. What we had in the 2010 maps are what's in blue. Okay, now what we're looking at to the right, we're not looking at the floodplain to the right, we're just looking at the pink and the blue to the left. That's what I'm talking about. So you can see where that has shifted into Pronghorn Unit 18, and they're actually trying to build on those lots right now. Okay, so you can see that that's shifted into that area. That's one of the things we're correcting. We're bringing street names up to date. We're actually adding, now you can go to the maps and you can actually see some of the subdivision in these streets on the new maps. Okay, they're paper maps. Before they were in black and white, they just had a few streets. You couldn't tell whether a structure was adjacent to a floodplain or not. Now we have imagery on the new maps. We've corrected the shifts. We have more streets. Streets were mislabeled. Those have been corrected. So all of that is it's pretty much finalized. It's wrapped up. Mayor, I think you had a box of stuff come to you here recently And that's standard procedure. It has to come to you first. And so that's the final. So August 24th is when that wraps up, and those will be official. And the good thing about it is the paper maps we can still use, but now FEMA has a digitalized version. You can actually go to the FEMA Map Service Center and enter in Prescott Valley, and it'll come up with a GIS viewer, and you can zoom right into a lot you want to look at, and it'll show you the structure, it'll show you the limits of the floodplain. I mean, it's fantastic. It really makes life easier for somebody who, I get calls all the time, they want to know whether the structure's in a floodplain or not. And it's the structure you have to look at. It's not the lot. The only thing you insure is you insure the structure and its contents. $250,000 maximum on a structure for a residential and $100,000 for contents. So that's pretty much it. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to bring up too is flood insurance is only required. It's only mandatory if you're in a high-risk zone, a 100-year floodplain, and you have a federally backed mortgage. That's it. If you own it outright, it's up to you. If you have other sources of financing and it's not federally backed mortgage, it's up to you. I just had a call 2 weeks ago from a gal that's in a mobile home. She wants to do some improvements and some landscaping and everything. She's completely in a flood zone. And I asked her if she had flood insurance. She said, nope, I own it outright. I don't have any. Okay, that's your choice. Questions?
What was that website again, or they could pull up?
It's the FEMA Map Service Center. If you do a Google, you'll find that. And then it'll pull up, and you can enter Prescott Valley. And then that will pull up, and then on the upper right-hand side of that map, there'll be a little tab. I think it says NFHV, National Flood. I can't remember what it is now. National Flood Hazard Viewer, I think it is. It's a little tab. And you click that, and it'll zoom right in on Prescott Valley. Okay. And you'll see the areas, that are under study. They'll be surrounded in blue. You can pull up if you want to see if there's a letter of map revision or a letter of map amendment or some of these FEMA documents. You can pull up on a property, and it'll show where they're at. And you can see whether the lot's been engineered out of the floodplain or whether it's just a structure.
Councilwoman?
Okay. Ron, I had a question too. Is there a way to add a channel behind some of these homes that are on maybe an arroyo where the water does flow? To add a channel with baffles or reinforce it with like walls? Like I know you have flood walls when you're up to the ocean.
Typically, you have that stuff has to be looked at from an engineering standpoint. And it all depends on where it's at. A lot of it's developer driven, and it's up to the developer. If it was, say, a capital improvement project like Viewpoint Drive, that would be something that we would probably address. But typically, that would be either an HOA or something like that. And they'd have to look at that because when you put up walls or gabion baskets or whatever, you have to look at scour. You have to look at the various things. What kind of flows do you have? Can you just get away with turf mat, turf reinforcing mat, which is what we've used out on the Viewpoint corridor. You can see that mat that you staple in, and then the grass grows through it, and that reinforces and stabilizes that bank. So you have to look at that, and it all has to be engineered. You have to look at all of that.
So in technicality too, on the right side of your map up there where you have Bella Vista Lane, it looks like there's actual lots that are underwater there. Is that actually already owned property?
So that right there is different now. You can see there's just a little tiny wedge between the county section line and where those lots are at. You see that little purple dot there?
Yeah.
There's a little tiny wedge through there. That actually has a channel now, and it was the responsibility of the Pronghorn subdivision to go through the FEMA process and engineer a channel in there. So that actually doesn't look like that now. That's actually a channel. Okay. It's like this now.
Okay, that's what
that was part of it. They had to do that process before we would let them develop in that area. And that's a requirement. It's a federal requirement. 5 acres of 50 lots. You can't have structures from a subdivision in a floodplain. You can have open space in a floodplain, but not the structures.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman?
And a subdivision having to do heavy engineering in order to build is not unusual because Granville has had to do that every step of the way,
Absolutely.
correct? Yeah.
You'll see they're getting ready to start Unit 15, which is over by the school. It's on the right-hand side of Glassford Hill. They're going to start that. They had to do the same process. They had to engineer the channel, submit all of the data. We have to look at it. It's a cursory review for us because we don't have the in-house technology to, run all the data. So we do a cursory review, and then we rely on FEMA to look at it. And they do a pretty thorough, review. And they've had we need more of this data, more of that, back and forth. And so they finally got what's called a conditional letter of map revision. And that's pretty much where you would submit your proposed plans and hydrology and hydraulics and everything. And you say to FEMA, this is what we would like to build. Here's our data. And they say, okay, we will give you a conditional letter of map revision. They don't just go and change the maps every time something happens. They change the maps by letter, and then when that 10 or 15-year sequence comes out, that's when they incorporate all those changes. Okay, so they'll issue a conditional letter of revision. They'll say, we like what you're going to do, go build it. You go build it, you do the as-built, all of the survey, you resubmit it to FEMA with a letter of map revision, and you say, this is what we did as we proposed we would do it. We'd like for you to officially, by letter, revise the floodplain map. At that time, they'll issue a letter of map revision, and that's when the floodplains actually change.
So now that everything's digital, I know it used to be years before they'd change a paper map. Now that everything's digital, are they more up to date?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so much more. But we're still required, and I don't know if that federal statute's going to change, but we are still required to hold the paper maps and keep them up to date. And I'm not sure if when you're doing a lot of mortgage companies or whatever, they'll hire a third party to go and look. And I'm not sure, and I'll have to look into it. I'm not sure if you can use the digital maps now and get away from the paper maps, or whether they're still forcing everybody to use the paper maps. So I'm not quite sure.
Question, like with Granville, then the way he proposed it, from the time he originally proposed it to get the conditional one, you go do the work, submit it back all in. What is usually the turnaround time with FEMA from the time you do your original submission to when you do your second one after it's been done?
Well, they've really tried to crack down on the delays, and so they've gone and they said, okay, when we submit something to you, FEMA, you have 90 days, okay, and then we need something from you. So often what you'll see at day 90 is we need a little more data, and then the clock starts again. We need a little more data. So not always, but right. I want to say for this one, from start, it was about 8 months to get the 6 to 8 months to get the Clomar.
Okay.
And then it's probably going to be, another 6 to 8 months to get that Lomar.
Okay. Thank you.
So it might be a little bit sooner.
Right.
So 2 questions. Can he sell the lots before the Lomar?
I think he can, but I'm not sure. I think that's up to the board of realtors or whoever they go through. I think he can.
And then
but what happens, and I saw it on Unit 12, is so I'm pretty sure he can. He started building, and the Lomar hadn't come into play yet. So he was on the hook to go ahead and provide flood insurance for these folks until that came through. So.
And then on these lots to the left by the pink, the area that is now more blue, those 5 lots are still buildable. They just can't build in the blue, correct?
They can't put the structure in the blue.
Right.
That's correct, but we know that it's in the pink because those lots right there are probably 6 to 8 feet above where the bottom of that channel is.
And then on the ones on, is it Lakeshore?
Yeah, the Lakeshore one.
Far right one? Yeah, Lakeshore. So those people, you just, as an example, you said 24 are out and 18 new ones are in. Do we let them know in case
we did? That's a requirement.
Okay.
We have to let them know, this is what has happened. And for the ones that are now in the high-risk areas, and I'm not really too savvy on the insurance side of things, but once the floodplains change, they're kind of, they have like a year, I believe, to go ahead and submit, I think it's the insurance. They can do an insurance. What they can do is they're kind of grandfathered in, and so they can get even though they're mandatory, they have to have the flood insurance if they have the mortgage. They get it at a low risk rate and not at a higher risk rate. And so that's just a way of easing the burden. Hey, now all of a sudden
But we let the 24 now in case they are carrying.
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
that's a requirement as well. Yep.
One more. So Granville has a pretty large channel now over by Santa Fe Loop.
That's correct.
And I know that he's going to continue that on the other side of Glassford. Is that going to feed into that northern portion of the Lone Cactus floodplain channel? Is that the idea, or where's that water going to go?
He's going to stop. You see where the section line is for Granville? It comes straight down, kind of. You see where that section line is there? That's where he stops. From there on over, it's state land. And so they've designed it so that the channel, that it'll be channelized, then it fans back out to its original state where it hits that section line.
Oh, okay. I see.
Gotcha.
Good.
All right. Moving on, 3D competitive bid, SR 69 frontage road pavement overlay.
Okay, I know you all have seen this not too long ago. This was presented from the Public Works Director. This is a frontage road overlay project. It's going to use half cent sales tax dollars. It's frontage road with the exception of about 1,000 feet there in that county section. It's just a 2-inch overlay. It's one of the ways that we can use pavement maintenance. It'll extend the service life of the road. The road's not in quite the condition where you can just put a chip seal on it, but it is sturdy enough that you can do a 2-inch overlay, and this is common. We do it all over town. We've done sections of Spouse Drive. If you go on Luce Drive and you pass Mountain Valley Park, past the school, from there all the way to Navajo's a 2-inch overlay. There's a section of Yavapai Road just east of Robert Road that's a 2-inch overlay, or a 2 or 3-inch overlay. So it's common. We have done it, and it does extend the life of the road for quite a bit. And so that's what we're doing here. It's not going to take too long. We're looking at the end of June to have everything wrapped up. It'll be chip sealed, good to go. We did have bids. We had some successful bids. And we opened bids last week. Let's see, where am I at here? Wrong one. I'll get it here. I know it's in here somewhere. Where are you? Maybe I forgot it. I seem to have misplaced it.
I'm showing asphalt paving and supply.
Asphalt paving and supply, they were the low bidders. The engineer's estimate was $390,000, and so they came in. Could you? I'm not sure what that was.
317.
317. That's what it was, right? Again, local contractor. They did the Sunset Lane project and are currently doing the Coyote Springs pedestrian improvement project up on Cattle Track. We also have. So we'd like for you to award that contract next week. Also, Dave and Associates, who's been our longtime town contract engineer, they have there for administrative services as well. So we'd like for you to award that. A couple of items that I just wanted to show you really quick on what we like to do. We do like to notify the public. We're really big on it. We don't like surprises. This is something we typically do on our projects. We like to send out a notice of construction. We try to time it so that it's not too early and it gets lost in the shuffle somewhere on the countertop. And we like to not do it too late as well. So this is something that we send out. We'll send it out to most of the houses that you can see right in there in the subdivision and all along the frontage there. So there's 300 or so houses that we'll send this notice out to.
Is that
Is that county there, that part?
That's Lynx Lakes Estates, and that is a county island.
So is county going to plan on improving that? I mean, what's the distance there? Probably 400 feet?
It's 1,000 feet.
1,000 feet.
And we asked them if they wanted to partner, and they said no, because they had just last summer, they had just done a slurry seal on it, and it was a new product for them. And so they had just resurfaced that section last summer. And so they wanted to see how that product's going to hold up because it's a new product for them.
What is that then, that slurry system?
It's basically like a sand. It was like a sand and oil type, almost like a chip seal, but it was like a sand oil type of a slurry that
Why
you
didn't they call us?
put on there in gardens.
So how does that come about? I guess I'm here, only been here 4 years. But when I look at that, how do you end up getting, maybe I need to ask this guy, how come we got this small section there that's county?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's actually Councilman, it actually looked a lot different than that. It used to be almost like a checkerboard back in the day between one business would be Prescott Valley, then it would go to county, and then the next business would be Prescott Valley.
It's my understanding that to incorporate, there has to be a vote on the residents there.
And I think, I mean, this might be a time for staff to, let's try to find a strategy to at least reach out, see what the interest of just at least the frontage road people there in regards to what they have. Because I have had, I believe it was Jose Batista from the Mexican market there. He had reached out and he had some concerns with his septic. And those individuals right there are on septic. And owning a business on septic wasn't very good for what he had going on. So it's just so odd to me to think that we're just going to fix a road. That we're literally going to stop. We're going to move 1,000 feet. Then we're going to fix the rest of the road from there on out. And it's just maybe something we
County
can
islands are everywhere, though. If you go right over here, Long Look to the intersection,
yes,
you see that empty lot to the right? That's a county island.
No, absolutely. The corner of Long Look, northwest corner.
When we were doing that intersection, we had to fill that. We wanted to fill that lot. We had to get approval from the county, get a grading plan and everything.
So I think we're at a point we can probably try to at least tighten it up a little bit and see what that kind of looks like. Vice Mayor, you have something?
Okay, one more. This is the other thing we do. This is a mock-up of the project signs that we like to put out on our projects. Just kind of gives a little information on the funding source, who all the players are. There's an emergency contact number there. That's typically the contractor. Just another, way of informing the public of what we're doing. So that's it for me.
Council, we have anything else? That's it. Thank you, sir. Nice job.
Thank you.
There's nothing else. Looks like we kind of cleared out the space here in the audience, so we'll adjourn. Drive safe, everyone.
It was